dairy.
Yeah.
They report it to be so good for your health.
I always tell my students, you read the label and it talks about all these great ions and all these other stuff that they're putting in there, and I'm like, it's marketing. Don't fall for that. He's like, but sir, look, it's full of vitamins and stuff. I'm like, come on, you get more vitamins if you eat an apple. Oh, well. I'm going to go ahead, just because of time, go ahead and close the poll. And let me see if I can share the results. Is it going to let me? Oh, so got 11 seconds. Compiling. All right. I'm trying to see. I can't do the share. I thought I did. Do you guys see the results for the poll?
We see the results, the total of how people applied, but we don't see the correct answer.
Okay. I will go through that. So humans use 1 million plastic bottles a minute. Okay, that's question number one. Number two, since 1950, the world has created 6.3 trillion kilograms of plastic waste. What percentage of the plastic produced since 1950 has been recycled at least once? 8%. Question number four, of the 78 billion kilograms of plastic packaging material produced in 2013, what percentage was recycled at least once? 2%. Question number five, the problem of plastic disposal was first recognized in 1969. And this was by an executive in the chemical company that was getting into the business of making plastic. And even back then, people were saying, no, we don't want to worry about that. And so at the very beginning, there was already a hint that this was going to blow up to be something much worse than it is. A plastic credit card weighs 5 grams. And every human on the planet is basically eating 1 plastic credit card a week. Now, if you guys have seen some of the articles that have been posted out there recently, there's a lot that is being discovered as these little plastics are coming into the food web. So while you're eating that great fish that you caught out in the Gulf of Mexico, unfortunately, there may be some plastic in it. And that's one of the things that scientists are starting to look at now, and they've been able to sort of calculate that basically we're eating 1 credit card's worth of plastic in the food web today every week. Now they're saying that by 2050, the amount of plastic waste will double. And so there's a lot of legislation that people are trying to push to try to get a handle on that. And unfortunately, they're faced with the oil industry. They're faced with the, you can imagine all the manufacturers that have plastic in their processes, they don't want to change. And that's going to be a huge obstacle for it to look at. And we're going to learn a little bit more about that when our guest speaker, Jace, speaks to us today. All right, it is, according to my watch, 6:59. I'm going to go ahead and get ourselves started. It's an educational note. It's not a depressing note like Barbara said, so ignore her. All right, let's see. Close that. Share. Sharing code. Oh, no, not that. Great. All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Exactly on 7 o'clock. Welcome, everyone. Glad to see everybody's here. A couple of things that we're going to cover. We're going to discuss the milestones that we have for this past month. A couple of other pieces of announcements. Tonight's speaker will be Jace Tunnel. Afterwards, we're going to talk about some of the speakers that we have on deck for the next few months. We do have an update for our COVID guidelines for our chapter that I want to review. A quick and brief financial update, and then I want to get to some of the things that we're doing as far as communications and outreach. Hopefully most of you have seen our February list for advanced training, and there's a couple that I want to highlight that were on that list. And then we have a lot of volunteer opportunities that are coming into the pipeline, so I want to cover some of them as well. So recognition of milestones. We had 2 individuals hit their 100-hour milestone. So congratulations to Brittany and Rosemarie. They hit the 100-hour milestone. We had 1 person hit the 250 hours, and that was Ruben. Now this is a great picture of Ruben, because if you ever see him, he's always working. So congratulations to Ruben. He's definitely been working a great deal, from Ramsey to the zoo to Palo Alto. Fantastic guy. Hopefully you guys get to meet him if you haven't already. Do we have Nicole on the line?
Yes, I'm here.
So we have Nicole Ekstrom, president of Friends of Laguna Tascosa National Wildlife, and I invited her to share a little bit about her event coming up.
Yeah, thank you guys for inviting me to this meeting to talk about our virtual Ocelot Conservation Festival. Most of you probably know that every year the Friends and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife put on the Ocelot Conservation Festival at the Gladys Porter Zoo the first weekend of March. This year with COVID, we're going to do it virtually. And the Friends has taken a big lead on this effort because of the virtual component to it. So we're going to have a lot of presentations, mainly by various partners, fish and wildlife people, and just other participants that are involved in ocelot research, conservation, and even some art and kids activities as well. There's going to be a virtual ocelot run. Usually every year we do the 5/1K that goes through the zoo and around downtown Brownsville. This year it's going to be a virtual fun run where people can do it on their own time at their own leisure for the entire month of March. And we're just encouraging people to post with the hashtag. I don't have that hashtag handy on me at the moment, but it's going to be on our Facebook page. So Save Texas Ocelots on Facebook. And we also are going to be doing a virtual auction. So usually with the festival, we do an entire weekend of events. We usually have our annual fundraiser on a Friday, and then we do Saturday. The last 2 years we've been doing a Saturday event called An Afternoon with an Ocelot, and we've been doing that at the Longhorn Cattle Company out in San Benito. And then on Sunday is the festival at the zoo. So we're trying to just kind of keep that momentum going and keep all the activities that we normally do going just virtually. So it should be a pretty cool event. We've got a lot of great speakers, a lot of just really good science mixed in with some fun things. We have a lot of fish and wildlife people presenting, people from the Cincinnati Zoo, different artists are being featured. So please check it out. We're going to be posting some schedules and some things on our website. Well, so the entire thing is going to be on our website, savetexasocelots.org, and also on our Facebook page, Viva the Ocelot. We'll have a lot of posts and updates on it coming up in the next, starting now in the next couple of weeks, you'll be seeing that on our page. That's about it.
Fantastic. Thank you, Nicole.
Yes, thank you so much for inviting me. I really appreciate it.
Sure. if you guys want to know what Nicole looks like, I shared the little video that they posted on their Facebook page onto our Facebook page, sort of a little teaser for their festival coming up. So you get to actually see Nicole in there. So we look forward to more information. Follow their Facebook page. Viva the Ocelot. If you haven't gone out there to tag that, that's a great resource. And we look forward to it. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much. Is my video not on? I'm sorry.
I did. Oh, yeah. Okay. I guess it's
She's on.
but if anybody wants a reminder, we have her video now on our Facebook page as well. Thank you, Nicole.
Thank you.
And I donated 2 pieces of artwork to it today. So anybody else out there that does artwork and cats and ocelots, anything around ocelots, get a hold of Nicole. They need more stuff for their auction, I'm sure. Right, Nicole?
Of course. Thank you, Diana. Nice to see you again.
You're welcome.
Long time no see, right?
Yeah, just this morning.
All right, fantastic. Thank you, guys. Okay, we're going to get to hear our speaker, but before I do that, I want to stop sharing. I want to switch back, and I want to give the stage to one of our members. And hold on a second. Oh, our dogs heard that honking and really liked it. All right, so we have, oops, I just changed it. Hold on a second. Okay, so we have one of our members who's very well versed with NURDLE Patrol. And so we have asked Chris Freeman to help us introduce our speaker for tonight. Go ahead, Chris, if you'll unmute yourself. I think you're still muted.
She's still muted.
Yeah.
Oh, can you hear me now?
There you go. Fantastic.
Okay. Hi, everyone. It is my honor to introduce tonight's speaker. I first discovered Jace a few years ago on Facebook, and I learned all about NURDLEs just by following his posts and watching his very educational posts and with instructions and videos on how to collect and report NURDLEs. And then I was very fortunate to meet him in person a while back at an environmental symposium in Brownsville. And that is, he was the main speaker there at that time. Jace Tunnell is the director of the Mission Aransas Reserve at the University of Texas Marine Science Institute and founder of NURDLE Patrol. He was the president of the Coastal Bend Bays Foundation from 2016 to 2018, was named Conservationist of the Year in 2017 by the Coastal Conservationists Association, and in 2020, Coastal Icon by Texas Sea Grant. His conservation efforts include educating the public about plastic pollution, estuarine science, and protection of our natural resources. Jace received a master's degree in marine biology from Texas A&M University at Corpus Christi in 2001. So welcome, Jace.
Well, thank you very much. And it's good to see you again, Chris. And I love your t-shirt.
Thank you. I love it too.
Yeah, I got the NURDLE Patrol going. Awesome. Well, Robert, thanks for sending me the link to be able to present tonight. And the poll that you just gave was perfect segue into what we're going to be talking about tonight. because those numbers of plastic that not only is getting into the ocean, but that we're actually consuming, it's gone too far, right? And so hopefully there's something we can do about that. So tonight I'm going to be talking to you a little bit about what microplastics are kind of in general. Then we're going to get down into what NURDLEs are, and then talk about how they're getting into the environment, how we're going out and collecting and seeing maybe where all these NURDLEs are coming from so that we can create policy to make changes to those getting into the ocean. In general, there's a couple of different types of microplastics out there. There's the primary and the secondary. And the primary is where the NURDLEs fall in. NURDLEs, are the raw material to everything plastic. There's a couple of other types of primary plastic, like microbeads that goes into cosmetics. And then some of your clothing, the synthetic fibers, that's also considered primary. And then secondary is what's been melted down and made into a product and then broken down over time. And so this picture that you see here is actually on North Padre Island, and it's a bunch of secondary microplastics. And every once in a while you could see a NURDLE in there, little round dots. And so this is sort of a visual of what we just talked about. You can see like a water bottle here that's a larger product. UV light, wave action, breaks it down. This stuff never goes away. It doesn't dissolve. It just gets into smaller and smaller pieces and then available into smaller and smaller animals into the food chain. And then clothing obviously has fibers. And Robert, whenever you're talking about, every week we consume credit cards worth of plastic, I just think about me because I do the laundry in the house. And so every time I clean out that lint thing, it's like a plume going up in my face. And I'm thinking, man, I hope all these clothes in here are cotton, but and then we have NURDLEs, and then the personal hygiene microbeads. And I put this in here as sort of looking at secondary and how it can break down over time, because I like the look of this water bottle. And because if there's one thing that we can change in our own lives is do not drink out of these water bottles. But this is a good visual here about what a water bottle looks like, and then over time when it breaks down into smaller and smaller pieces. The other thing is that those secondary plastics, it is almost impossible to figure out where those plastics came from. Now with primary, especially with NURDLEs, there is a way that we can figure out where that's coming from. The problem right now is that only the manufacturers know whether they made the pellet or not. And that's based on two things. One is the chemical recipe, and then the other is the shape and size. So they can tell either way on those things whether they made the NURDLE or not. Okay. So how are these NURDLEs getting out into the environment? Well, I wish it was as simple as saying, well, it's just coming from the plastic manufacturing sites. Because then that would be fairly easy. We change a couple things in their permits and make sure there's inspections and stuff like that. But they don't. It's not just at the manufacturing sites where they're getting out into the environment. It's anywhere in the supply chain. So whenever they're onloading or offloading the pellets from the manufacturing site, a little bit gets on the ground. And then what happens with anything on the ground? When it rains, it gets into their stormwater, then out into the nearest creek or river, then into the bays, and then ultimately in the oceans and back up on our beaches. Along transportation. So there's been over 100 surveys done on railroads, and all of those have NURDLEs at them. I mean, the number of NURDLEs along railroads is pretty amazing. And then during shipping, which during shipping, usually that's considered a big spill, say containers go overboard and things like that. And so let me show you this picture right here. So if you look at the bottom right-hand corner and those big boxes you see out there, those are actually containers that go on ships. And that's what you see like on railroads and stuff like that. This is a spill where the containers broke open. All those little bags had NURDLEs in them, and that white powder is NURDLEs going into the ocean. Now, this is well documented. If this happens, they're usually, they can predict where all these pellets are going to end up, on what shorelines and when, because of modeling of ocean currents, things like that. But the thing that is not documented is this everyday spill of onloading and offloading and during transportation. And when it rains, it getting into the waterways. So those are the less, the things that it's chronic and it's happening on a daily basis. This has been a problem for a long time. And so, in that poll a while ago, 1969, they knew that plastics were a problem. Well, in 1992, the Environmental Protection Agency came out with a document that showed that over 80 species of shorebirds that they knew about at the time were eating these plastic pellets. So if you look at this, it looks like a picture of a book. There's a black and white photo in the middle. That's the intestinal tract of a seabird, and it's full of pellets. And so what happens whenever these birds, if they eat one or two, they probably just pass it through. But if they eat enough of these, it can clog their intestinal tract. There is no nutritional value to these, so they could end up starving to death, or it just clogs it up to where they can't eat their normal food and they can die. This 1992 report also has in there studies that were done at the University of Texas Marine Science Institute, where I'm at, by a man named Tony Amos. And he necropsied 4 different species of sea turtles. So we have a rehab center there. And so whenever a turtle dies, they cut it open to see why it died. And they had that over 7% of the sea turtles had these little plastic pellets in their belly. One of the ladies actually that worked with Tony Amos was Pamela Plotkin, who's the Texas Sea Grant director. And so them two together are listed in this document. And then there's also fish species, of course. And so think about this. This was 1992. So if you look at today and all the studies that have been done, there are hundreds and hundreds of species that they know about now that eat these plastic pellets. And so consumption is one problem. The other problem is that these plastic pellets act like sponges. So they absorb harmful chemicals like PCBs, DDTs, PAHs, all these kind of chemicals that, you don't want in your skin and you don't want to eat it. And we don't want that for the animals either. And so the fear is for human health is that if fish eat these plastic pellets and there's those harmful chemicals, do those chemicals, are they released from the actual NURDLE, and do they go beyond the stomach lining of the fish gut and into the muscle tissue that then we're eating? And so we don't yet have that answer, but there are a number of researchers looking at that, and we now have the equipment to be able to detect those types of things. So I believe in the next couple of years, we'll have the answer to that. This is very similar to an oil spill. In Texas, many of the beaches we're driving on the beach. If there's a spill and all these pellets wash up, it has to be taken care of immediately. Like within the first 24 hours, just like an oil spill. Because if the tide comes up, it spreads it all across the beach. The wind blows these things around. People are driving on the beach. And so we're trying to work with the state and federal agencies on what their role could be, similar to an oil spill. If there's an oil spill, there's a lot of different state and federal agencies that come in, and they have different roles of hindcasting, where the oil came from, fingerprinting, counting out how much there is per mile. We need a similar type situation for when this happens, on the Texas coastline here. And so it actually did happen. And this is what started up NURDLE Patrol. There was a spill in September of 2018 that in the high tide line, it was just millions and millions of pellets. And so we did a study where we looked about 20 miles of beach, and we calculated that there were 300,000 to 1 million pellets per mile. And so we ended up calling the Coast Guard, who called the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality. They came out and said that they're not going to do anything about it. They took samples and stuff like that. But a couple of days later, they said, we can't do anything about it because we don't know how to clean it up, and there's no responsible party. And they said, most likely this happened offshore or it happened in, Mexico or something like that. And so that's what got us thinking about, where did this stuff come from? Because if you look at the ocean currents, there's something to be said about where this trash could be coming from and the NURDLEs, because we've done studies at the Mission Aransas Reserve in looking at trash accumulation up on beaches across the Gulf of Mexico. We had partners, and so we had a 2-year study where we looked at how much trash was coming up. And in the Texas Coastal Bend, we have 10 times the amount of trash being pushed up on our shorelines than any other state in the Gulf of Mexico in the U.S. And that has to do with this loop current that goes around the Yucatan Peninsula and then into the Florida Straits. And then it creates these eddies that then push anything that's in the ocean up on our shorelines. And so it was a possibility that could happen. So we decided that, there's about a 40-mile stretch of beach that we want a few volunteers to help us with. And so we came up with this methodology of going out for 10 minutes at a time at the beach and collecting NURDLEs. And then at the end of that 10 minutes, you tell us how many you found, where you're at, and the date. And then we would put that on a map. And then so we created a Facebook page too, because we wanted us to be able to show pictures of what we're finding, make sure they were actual NURDLEs. And so that's how it started. But within a couple of weeks, we ended up having organizations all over the United States and in Mexico, in the Gulf of Mexico, wanting to know if these pellets were going to show up on their beach. And so it blew up real quick. And so I was getting about 300 emails because before we had nurdlepatrol.org, people were emailing me all the data and I was putting it into a spreadsheet. And so that was about 300 emails a month. And I was like, okay, we got to do something different. So we ended up coming up with a website where it's all automated, which has been a huge help for communities around the United States, because I'll show you some pictures of the utility of that website. And it's really a tool for communities to fight plastic pollution. So if you look at the type of plastic pellets that are washing up, they're not just white plastic round pellets. They can be square, oblong, flat, all kinds of different colors. And so this is where it goes to the shape and size. This actual sample right here in this black photo, this was a sample I gave to a company that makes plastic pellets. They wanted to know if some of these were theirs. And so I gave him this and he said, Jace, we can tell whether we made these or not based on the shape and size. And so they have a research facility they send them to. He said, we can also tell by chemical analysis too. But he's all, I'll let you know what I find out. Of course, he never contacted me again. So I don't know if some of those were his or not. Some of that company. But so we ended up creating this nurdlepatrol.org. And this is where volunteers can go in. They fill out a form, which is real simple. It's basically where you were at, how many NURDLEs you found, for how many minutes, and the date you were there. And then they can go to a map on the website, and it shows their data automatically, and they can zoom in. So this is like a Google Earth type platform where you can zoom in to your city, and you can see who sampled where and what the concentrations were. Then you can print that up, and you can take it to your elected official and say, look, we got a problem here. We got to do something about this. And so this is what we wanted to do for not only cities that are having the problem, but statewide, because we think that there's a real impact that communities can make statewide by changing policy. And I'll get into that here in a second. But if you look at this map, just of the Gulf of Mexico, the greens are 0 pellets were found, because remember, even 0 is a data point, right? So what's interesting about this is if you look at Florida, there's a lot of greens in there, right? And the yellows, there are some yellows, those are 1 to 30 were found. But there are very few plastic manufacturing sites in Florida. You don't start getting plastic manufacturing sites until you get up towards Pensacola, which is up in the, kind of the panhandle up here. And then the further west you go, the more plastic manufacturing sites you see until you get to the hotspot of Galveston Bay. And so that's where I'm going to kind of zoom in here. But let me tell you a little bit about more about these colors here. The orange gets higher. You know, the warmer the color gets, the higher the concentration is, to where you get to purple, and that's over 1,000 pellets in a 10-minute period being found. So that is a lot of pellets. Here's a little closer look, and so you can really see those greens over in Florida, and then how you go west, and it just gets higher and higher concentrations. Now, what I want to point out here is that, remember what the state agency said of, you know, this probably happened offshore or from another country. What I point out here is the highest concentrations that we are finding are up in the bay systems, where the highest concentration of plastic manufacturing sites are, which tells us that likely a big source of these plastic pellets are coming from within, you know, where these manufacturers are in the United States. So that we can't be blaming another country on this. Although we're finding these globally. So yeah, there's a problem everywhere. But from what we're being able to see here, there's a huge problem here in Texas. So we're trying to do something about that. So let's zoom in to Galveston Bay. So this is Galveston Bay. Houston is in this area, and their port area goes from where you see the name Houston in that orange dot. There's something called Buffalo Bayou, and that is a heavily industrialized area. Very little access. That's why you don't see many samples here, is because it's all industry and it's there's no access. There's a couple of bridges that people have been able to sample under and get some samples. But other than that, you have to get out into the bay, and that's where you start, you actually have access. And so that's why you see more samples being taken, you know, along the western shoreline here in Galveston Bay. But some of these, it's not uncommon to get over 1,000 NURDLEs in 10 minutes. You see all the reds, a lot of these are 400 to 500 in a 10-minute period. I've been down there to these beaches, and after heavy rainfall, you can just sweep your hand over the high tide line and pick up 200 to 300 pellets in one swipe. I mean, it's pretty amazing how many pellets are there. The highest concentration here is down here at Texas City Dike, with over 30,000 pellets being collected in 10 minutes. So another thing, if you're on nurdlepatrol.org and you zoom into your city where you're at, you can click on these dots, and this is where it tells you there's an ID number that we have so that we can track all the surveys that come in. Then it tells you the concentration. It tells you the location, how many volunteers there was, how many minutes were sampled, and then the latitude, longitude, and when you know, the date was put into here. And what is key about this is that our database automatically standardizes all the data. And so say you go out with 5 people. So 5 people, you put 5 volunteers in here, it will split the number collected by 10 minutes by one person, so that you can compare one dot here, say in South Padre, to one dot over in California. So with that standardization, the colors actually make sense. And so it's not like somebody was, you know, going out and had a whole bunch of volunteers, because that would not be accurate. Okay, some of the communities that have really latched onto this is there was a NURDLE spill. This was about 2 years ago in Charleston, South Carolina. They had a spill, and it wasn't from a manufacturing site. It was actually from a NURDLE distributor. So these are the people, they get NURDLEs from Texas, actually, and then by the rail cars coming in, and then they bag them up, put them on pallets, cellophane them, and then ship them all over the world to be melted down and into products. So they had a spill here, and they said, man, we want to know where this is coming from. So they started using this database, and they put over 300 surveys that they've done. And you can really tell kind of where the hot spots are. The distributor is right up in this area. And then they've also got a lot of rail cars and stacking lanes for rail cars up in this area. And so it's really kind of showing where the problem areas are. And they're able to work with the state agency over there and try to create improvements with the permitting for these facilities. Now, one of the things that we ended up doing was creating a publication, because one thing that we wanted people to be able to do is for future researchers, we wanted them to be able to use the NURDLE Patrol data for research and then also for litigation. So, whenever, say, an organization that's in charge of the waterway, they see a bunch of plastic pellets and then they think they figured out where it's coming from, they can use the NURDLEpatrol.org website and know they can be confident in the way the data has been collected everywhere so that it's all comparable and really show high concentrations where they're at and make a case to either sue the company or to at least get justification for the state agency making stricter permits for the company. So this is real important, and it's also open source, which means it's free to download, free to share. We paid an upfront cost because, a lot of these scientific publications, people have to pay like $40 to download it and read it. This is all free. And so all you got to do is type in NURDLE Patrol methodology and this publication will show up. Or you can go to nurdlepatrol.org and download it there. So to date, we've had over 2,500 volunteers send in surveys. With 7,400 surveys completed around the U.S. And then there's some outside of the U.S. as well at over 3,300 sites. And we now have over 107 partner organizations that we're working with. There's a couple of Texas Master Naturalists actually that are involved in this. And what we do for it, if there's going to be an organization that wants to be a partner, we send them a startup kit. And it has 100 glass sampling jars. It's got tweezers. It's got a flash drive that has a presentation in there that the organization can make their own. A bunch of different training videos and informational cards, stuff like that. And so, if I haven't sent y'all one yet and y'all are interested in it, let me know. We just ask that we get your logo to put it on as a partner on our website. And then you have to go out and do one 10-minute survey per month. And so, y'all got a bunch of people with y'all, and Chris is already going out. So, so I'll send y'all a kit. So what I did the other day is I went in and I wanted to know, what are the top 20 sites that have, the highest concentrations. And so I started looking at this, and this is what this is. So I downloaded all 7,400 surveys that have been done, and I just picked the top 20. And so you can see here, NURDLE concentration in 10 minutes, 250,000. This was in New Orleans. And last August, they had a container ship that spilled like 25 tons of NURDLEs into the Mississippi River. And so they were going out and they were getting handfuls and filling up buckets, like 5-gallon buckets in a 10-minute period. They were actually finding bags. It was Dow Company was the company, or that was the brand of NURDLEs anyway. And they were finding bags of these out there. So that's all these ones in green. These are all the ones that are from that NURDLE spill, and all those are in Louisiana, and they're all from the Mississippi River. If you take all of those out, because that was from a spill, so say you take those out, the rest of these out of 7,400 across the Mexico and the United States, they're all in Texas, the top out of, so this is some of the information that we're putting together to be able to work with the state of Texas on making changes to how these plastic pellets are handled. And so this is the kind of thing that needs to be put together so that we can show that, yes, there is a problem, and it's been a problem for a long time, and now it's time to do something about it. So what can be done? I mean, it almost seems mind-blowing. It's like there's so much out there. Well, the American Chemical Council, which is a group that represents the plastics industry. They came up with Operation Clean Sweep about 25 years ago. It's a voluntary program where the plastic manufacturing companies can get involved, and it has a bunch of best management practices and stuff like that in there. However, it's voluntary. And so, they created this because they knew that there was a problem and they wanted to show that they were going to do something about it. There probably has been some good things that have come out of it. but there's still a huge problem. And a lot of these best management practices that they have in this program need to be made mandatory. And so where can this stuff actually be made mandatory in? It would be with the wastewater and stormwater permits for any company that handles these plastic pellets. And so these are just a couple of key things that could be done. There needs to be a database that can link a plastic pellet, that the Environmental Protection Agency would have this database, and they could link it to, plastic company, chain of custody for when these things are shipped, so that when there is a spill, it's easy to identify who might be at fault, and then a cleanup can happen. And, quick accountability by the plastics industry. So there was a big lawsuit by FORMOSA Plastics. I don't know if y'all heard about this, but Diane Wilson and the San Antonio Bay Estuarine Waterkeepers sued FORMOSA Plastics because FORMOSA had been discharging plastic pellets out into a creek up in the Port Lavaca area. And so Diane Wilson ended up winning the lawsuit. They were suing for 160 million, somewhere in there, and they ended up winning for 50 million. But the key to this was not just the 50 million that was won, and Diane Wilson didn't take any of it. She's putting it all back into the community, into restoration and research in the area. But FORMOSA agreed to have zero plastic pellet discharge into their stormwater and wastewater permits. And why is that key? Because in Texas, the permits that all these plastic manufacturers have currently say that they are allowed to discharge trace amount of suspended solids. So that's a gray area. It doesn't even talk about plastics at all. So now this is the language that we're pushing in a Texas NURDLE bill that is hopefully going to be put out there by Todd Hunter, who's a state representative. He's authoring the bill. Hopefully that's going to be filed this week. And so that's some of the, but this language that FORMOSA agreed to is what we're really looking at taking. Now, TCEQ heard about this Texas NURDLE bill that we're about to file. And so they came out and they were asking the public what they ought to do, in changing these stormwater and wastewater permits. And so these are just a key thing. This was an email that came out from the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality, and it would include plastic pellets, powders, and flakes. So all that would be put into the permit. The companies would have to come up with a stormwater pollution prevention plan, and then this was all public comments were needing to be put in by August 10th of last year. Now there's a second public hearing, and that's going to be in April, but that's going to be after the legislative session has already gotten going and is well on its way. So this Texas NURDLE bill is going to be filed, and it's going to hopefully ensure that the states puts this type of language into the permits. Now here's the Texas NURDLE bill. The main things I want to show here, and this isn't the actual bill. The actual bill is a bunch of legal jargon, but this was a cliff notes that we had, and the main thing is zero discharge of plastic pellets, flakes, and powders, monthly monitoring, and then TCEQ must do inspections on sites. And so NURDLE Patrol actually received $1 million of the $50 million from the settlement from FORMOSA. And so what we're doing with that $1 million is we get $200,000 over each year for 5 years. And so we hired a full-time NURDLE Patrol coordinator. So, if y'all were wanting, say, one of those NURDLE Patrol startup kits, our coordinator would be the one to be able to put all that together, get your address and all that, where to send it. And so, and she's also leading the charge for the Texas Plastic Pollution Symposium, which is coming up on March 4th and 5th. And that's down there in South Padres where we're hosting it this year. But this money is making sure that it's free to anybody who wants to go. So it's paying for all the food. It's actually for students that come and present their research that they're doing on plastics. It pays $500 travel for them. And so there's a lot of things that it's being able to do. We're also creating a NURDLE Patrol app. We're making improvements to the website. And we're making a bunch of videos and stuff. So actually in the next couple of weeks, there's a documentary coming out about NURDLEs, and it's real entertaining. I've seen a draft of it, and so y'all look out for that. Here's the startup kit I was telling you about. So there's actually t-shirts and buffs in there because, you know, we got COVID going on, but then we put it all inside of this duffel bag, so it's all contained. But if y'all are interested in this, you know, let me know. My email's up here. It's real simple. jace@utexas.edu. We're also creating for teachers. So we had a lot of people getting a hold of us saying, you know, we're teachers. We're not going to take all the students out to go sampling, but we want to teach them about how plastic's getting to the environment, you know, how watersheds work, you know, what can be done about this. So we created a curriculum for teachers, and it all goes in this metal box. And there's 6 glass jars of NURDLEs that are in there. And so this is a perfect kit. If you know any teachers that would like one, email me their information, and we can send them one. These were just made. They're being put together this week. We've been working on them for the last 3 or 4 months. And so that's something new. Like I said earlier, we've got a Facebook page. If y'all are interested, get on there. It's a closed group. There's about 2,500 people on there right now. And then nurdlepatrol.org, of course, has training videos and all kinds of stuff. We have news and all that. We also, on Mission Aransas, we have a YouTube channel, and that we've got a lot of promotional videos. So we actually, today, I just posted about a video we're sending out to all our partners that has a blank space at the end where they can put their own logo on there. And so, you know, the idea is to spread this NURDLE Patrol. Organizations make it their own community science program, you know, with no, you know, you don't have to mention the University of Texas Marine Science Institute or anything. It'd be your own. It's a good way to get citizens, you know, involved. And I know Master Naturalists, y'all do all kinds of stuff. This is one of my last slides, and it just talks about some current and future funding. And so we've got the $1 million from NURDLE from the FORMOSA lawsuit. We've got another one from the Coastal Bend Bays and Estuaries program looking at chemical absorption into those plastic pellets. And so we're going to create a map of what concentrations of chemicals are in these plastic pellets so that people know it's a good indicator of water quality. You know, if you got PCBs in your water quality, they're going to be absorbed into those plastic pellets, and it'll tell you something. We're also looking at fingerprinting these pellets as well, so we can figure out where they're coming from. And then we've got some other stuff we just submitted last week, actually, a grant to the NOAA Marine Debris Program for doing what we're doing here in the U.S. for spreading NURDLE Patrol across, you know, to other organizations. We're going to try to do that in Mexico. So we're translating everything into Spanish, the phone app, the website, you know, all the brochure type stuff we have, and then pushing out startup kits all across Mexico, as well as doing a plastic pollution symposium, which has never been done in Mexico. And so hopefully that gets funded. We'll hear about that soon. So one of my last slides, you know, why are we doing all this? Well, these are my kids, Jack and Parker. You know, they ought to be out there picking up seashells and playing in the water, not picking up plastic off the beach. And so there's something we can do about this now. We know there's a problem. And so that's why we're trying to create policy to make change. Thank y'all very much. I'll take any questions you got.
Thank you so much, Jace. We do have a couple of questions. One had to do with, are there any federal regulations to help sort of fight this?
Unfortunately, plastic pellets are not considered a hazardous material. And so currently, you know, there is the Clean Water Act. And so you're not allowed to just discharge whatever you want into the water. There is that. But it's not considered hazardous. So when there is a spill, you know, even if it's on accident, and this is all on accident, and it's being sloppy, actually. But if there is a spill, you don't have the same type of urgency that you would have if it was a hazardous material. And so that's one thing that needs to change at the federal level is that these need to be considered hazardous, because they might not be hazardous when they are just the plastic pellet at the factory. But once they enter the waterway and they start absorbing these harmful chemicals and they start impacting the wildlife, they do become hazardous.
Is it possible that once the connection is made, it might be considered much more of a danger than it is today?
Yeah, and that's the case we're trying to make by doing all these projects where we're looking at the chemicals being absorbed. And then we have some other colleagues that are looking at, what happens when fish eat these, looking at bird contents, they find dead birds and they open those up to look at the stomach contents and then look at the muscle tissue, stuff like that. And so hopefully the connection can be made that, yeah, these are hazardous and that they need to be treated as such.
Is there any biodegradable plastic research taking place that you know of?
Actually, there's a group, there's a couple of chemists actually working on enzymes that would eat the plastic. And I was on a couple of proposals where I was the field guy going out, and then I would send them the NURDLEs and then up in the lab, and then they would do all the chemistry and stuff on it. But yeah, there is some science going on that. So, and actually, some of the presentations, hopefully March 4th at the symposium, hopefully they'll be able to present on that. And so we're just now going through the abstracts. And so hopefully some of the chemical side of things is in there. So
one of the things you mentioned is sort of fingerprinting these NURDLEs. I think I remember reading an article that said that the companies are starting to fight back, that they don't want to disclose their patented shape, or else we know their spill belongs to them. Is that true?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And this is the same with why Whataburger isn't going to give up their ketchup recipe, because it's theirs and that's what makes them unique from the other companies. And so, yeah, I mean, there's definitely something to that, but that's why it wouldn't be released to just anybody. It needs to be the federal government. It needs to be, I guess, a secret database, but it needs to be accessible to when there's a spill that somebody's held accountable.
What do you do to permanently dispose of NURDLEs?
So we ask people to put them in a cool jar and show other people, keep them up on their shelf. It makes a good conversation piece. But if people just absolutely do not want to have them, they're going to have to put them in their kitchen bag or in an old pickle jar that can be closed up, because you can't recycle them. They're too small to be recycled. And most recycling plants can't recycle plastic bottle caps, can't recycle straws, all that stuff's too small. So NURDLEs definitely are. Plus, if you just throw it loose in your big trash bin, most likely it's going to fall out once it's put into the big truck. So, it's got to be sealed up somehow and probably in your kitchen trash.
One last question here. Do you know about the organization As You Sow?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I've talked with them a number of times. So they buy stock in these big plastic companies, and they buy enough to where they have a say in what they're a major shareholder and they have say in what the company does. And so they've done a lot of work in making sure that plastic companies are held accountable and that they're more transparent when there is a spill. And this is just a lot of the stuff they've done is just in the last couple of years. And so they're based out of California. Good group.
Does anyone else have a question? They can unmute themselves and go ahead and ask if you wish.
What about the plastics that claim to be biodegradable? I've heard that maybe they aren't as biodegradable as they claim to be.
Yeah, instead of something taking 400 years to break down, it might only take 50 years. Now, there is some stuff there was a group of, they must have been, they weren't even in high school yet. It was a group of girls that came down, and they had a 6-ring package that, that will hold like Coke bottles or something like that. And they put this thing in water, and the thing just dissolved into slime. And so I know that there's stuff out there that can be used. There was just this commercial, it was on like Facebook, where it was compressed cornstarch, and it was for the same thing. It was a 6-ring binder, and it showed sea turtles that were eating it. So there's products out there. The problem is the expense of it, and so companies are looking for the bottom line of making money. And so there's other products out there and things that'll work, but what's it going to cost the company to be able to have the same thing? Plastic is cheap, it's durable, it lasts a long time. That's why we love plastic. The problem is some of these things that are being made are just so disposable that we use them one time and then we throw them away, and then they end up in the environment. And so, some of the things that we can create, what I always tell people is like, the less demand there is for plastic, the less plastic pellets that will be made. And so the less likely plastic pellets will be getting out into the environment. So some easy things are that we already know about is don't drink out of single-use water bottles. Take your grocery bag, your reusable grocery bags. Don't drink out of straws. Simple things like that that could really have a big impact if everybody was doing that, or if laws could be changed to prevent those things from even being sold or used in the cities. Of course, that's a big deal that the petroleum industry put a stop to real quick, at least in Texas.
There's a presentation I'm going to share with everybody that's coming up. It's a book review from NOAA. The authors wrote a book called Plastic Free. And one of the things I had not heard of before was Plastic Free July. Have you heard of it?
Yeah, I saw last July that came out, and I think that's great. I mean, that's a way for people to figure out, what am I using that's plastic, and is there other options that I can do to change? And so, it's a great education for people to figure out what they're actually using, because it is hard not to use plastic. It's on everything.
Yeah, definitely. We have a question. Have most states banned microbeads in the cosmetic industry?
I believe in the U.S., microbeads have been banned in the cosmetics industry. Well, actually, there was supposed to be a certain date, and I think it was January 2021 or something like that. Somebody else might know for sure, because I just read an article like last week saying that the cosmetics industry in the U.S. said that they were going to not have plastic microbeads in their cosmetics anymore, and they failed because some of them still have it in there. So I need to read the full article and not just the headlines.
And the cosmetic industry is just one piece of it. I read somewhere that it's in our toothpaste as well.
Yeah, some toothpaste have that in there too. Yep.
I would just like to add that it is very easy for anybody to do a NURDLE patrol after you've watched the videos that you've produced, and it's a good reason to go to the beach every day. So.
Well, thanks. Yeah, that's what's so cool about it. I think is like people are already going to the beach. Why not take 10 minutes? And if you're not going, it's a good excuse to go.
Definitely.
One question here. Could you please speak a bit more about how the recycling process fits into this problematic situation?
Yeah. So, recycling in particular, there's a bunch of stuff. We could talk a whole thing on recycling, but recycling just of NURDLEs, the companies can recycle NURDLEs. Once these NURDLEs hit the ground, even those the best management practices where you saw the tub that's underneath the rail car, and so if any of those hit that tub, they're not considered any good. They can't use them anymore. So they got to go into the recycle bin that they have on site there. But the general public can't do that. And so nobody else can. We don't have the facilities to be able to recycle these small plastic pellets. Now with plastic recycling in general, this was something that was made up by the plastics industry whenever they saw that there was bad feedback from the public about, oh, what are we going to do with all this trash? It's never going away. It doesn't break down. And now it's just accumulating everywhere. So they came up with this recycling as if that was the answer. So use as much as you want because you can just recycle it and we'll make it into something new. Well, we know now that that is not true. And Frontline News actually last year came out with a real good documentary about the whole recycling industry. And everybody ought to watch that. It's eye-opening. And we've all been scammed, basically, by the petroleum industry that recycling is working, and it's not.
So you're going to have multiple approaches, really, because there's so much plastic out there. And I know the industry probably doesn't want to lose their noodles, because it's their product that they're selling. So they want to minimize that. So I understand that stormwater is the stormwater permits, that's going to have to come from the state and the federal government. Typically the federal government, EPA, puts regulations out for the Clean Water Act to do your stormwater permit, and the state implements that. So that's probably going to end up being at EPA's court to make sure that their permits from the FORMOSA lawsuit are implemented. And I think that's great, but it's going to have to be a multiple phase approach, that you've got the stormwater, that you've got the NURDLE patrol, you've got the tracing, you've got the requirement to clean up afterwards. What do you think is going to be the biggest benefit to get the plastic out of the cycle? Because unless we come up with a biodegradable product, we can ban certain things, like out of cosmetics. We've never had it in the past. There's no need to have it in cosmetics. What would be your ideal solution for the problem? Your multi-prong approach?
Well, definitely innovation is going to have to be key. And so, and probably the federal government's going to have to put a lot of money into it, because it's apparent that industry is, the demand for cheap plastic is so much that it's going to almost double in production in the next 20 years. That's how much plastic's being used. And so without federal government intervention, there's probably, there's really no way to stop this. And then when people do try to stop it with bans and things like that, it's blocked by the petroleum industry. So it's going to have to be regulation. It's not going to be a voluntary thing. The industry is not going to volunteer to change their product from, the last 70 years, all their equipment that's been made has been made to make things out of these small plastic pellets. And so we're talking trillions and trillions of dollars to probably change to a different type of product or a different method. And so I don't know the answer, actually, but you're right. It's going to have to be a multi-prong approach, because it's not just the plastics industry. It's probably the federal government. It's the states and how you clean it up. It's communities and figuring out that they want something different. It's really complicated, and I don't think I have the answer.
I think we all wish you did, though. Please, thank you so much. We really greatly appreciate it. We tried to have you on last year before everything came to a screeching halt, but we do appreciate you having the time to fit us in. Thank you. We really appreciate this. Thank you so much.
Thank y'all very much. Thank you.
Let's see. I want to switch over to presenter now. For us, we are able to, again, thank you so much, Jace. We're able to take tonight's presentation as an AT opportunity, an advanced training opportunity. So make sure you log this into your VMS. 1 hour, and we can add the title Hurdles with NURDLES by Jace Tunnel just to help us make sure that we get your time approved. And again, check out that nurdlepatrol.org. Check out their Facebook page. There's a lot of information out there. The data is readily available. It's kind of interesting and a little bit scary to watch sometimes, but it is important for us to be very much aware. Oh, yes, and we do have a member of our chapter that is tied into the Plastic Symposium out at SPI, so we'll share information with you as soon as we get more details. And hopefully some of us can attend. I know that there's a virtual offering for some things, so we'll get that out to everybody as soon as we have it. Next month, we will have Dr. Christopher Gabler, his presentation on the changing coastal ecosystem. If some of you have gone out to either Laguna Tascosa or the Bahia Grande, you may have seen some of his equipment out there that he set up for some of his studies. So fortunately, Dr. Gabler was available for us to have a presentation with us on March 9th. So we'll have more information about that as that date gets closer. Just to let you know, we do have some speakers that we are planning on. In April, Jason Ferguson with the Fisheries Station. In May, Wendy Knight with Sea Turtle Inc. In June, we'll have Joshua Lee with Nature Tourism for the Texas Parks and Wildlife. We haven't scheduled yet, but we're also looking at Kelly Cummings from Resaca de la Palma. We're hoping to get somebody from the Laguna Vista Ecotourism Center. If you've gone out to the island on Highway 100, you've seen the construction going on. So hopefully we can get some information about that. We had a suggestion for Mike Quinn, a former invertebrate biologist at Texas Parks and Wildlife, and Brian Robert, the education coordinator for the Wildlife Habitat Federation. If there is somebody that you are interested in, somebody that you think would be a great speaker for our chapter, please send us an email, add it to the chat right now if you wish. We'll definitely try to see if we can get folks scheduled for our meeting. We do have an update on the COVID guidelines that Texas Master Naturalist has out there. For our group, this is more related to what AgriLife would like us to do. When we have an event or activity that is sponsored by our chapter, then we have some forms and some things that we need to do. There's a request that we need to complete and send to AgriLife for approval at least 2 weeks prior to the event. There is another form that we will use to be able to screen all participants as well. Now, again, this applies for anything that we might be coordinating and doing. So we had a Boca Chica Beach cleanup event that we sponsored, we chaired, we promoted. If we do that again, we'll follow this procedure for ourselves. Currently, anything that you are doing with another organization, if you volunteer at Sea Turtle Inc., at the SPI Birding Center, if you tend to garden out at Ramsey, for example, all of those fall under the purview of a different organization. So they're not sponsored by our chapter. We're volunteering for them. So this has a little bit of an implication for us when we're trying to make plans for things that we wish to do, but it doesn't apply for many of the things that we volunteer at already. We have a treasurer's report, our available cash of almost $17,000. We had an income in January of $807. Membership dues paid to date is about 64%, which is very good. Hopefully we'll narrow that down as we continue to move forward. Get out your pens. It's almost time for the next Chachalaca publication. The due date for your articles is February 16th. You can email your submission to the chachalaca@rgvctmn.org. It can be photos, it can be a story, it can be a review, a book review, it can be anything that you wish it to be submitted, and we will hopefully see that in the next publication. I believe we did post on Facebook some of the requirements, the length and so forth for you to look at. I do want to share a little bit of the things that some of our members took up. We had a presentation by Robin on the pelicans and the dilemma that they're facing out on the highway. And so some folks decided, is there something that we can do? And so I wanted to share with you a little bit about what they've created. And for now, this is sort of a campaign to create a brochure, a pamphlet, to raise awareness of what is happening to the pelicans out there. Hopefully we can have an impact, whether it's we are sending this out to every kiosk that is out on the island, at different places on Port Isabel, maybe Brownsville as well. They're coming up with different ideas, but this is one of the pamphlets, sort of a layout that they wanted to share. And so hopefully we can come up with something that we can share, we can give out to the community so that they can be aware of exactly what's happening to our pelicans. This is sort of their rough draft, their first initial shot at creating something. If you wish to participate, again, shoot us an email, put it down in the chat. We have 3 trainees this year in our class that decided to champion this cause. And they've created something very nice. We want it to be eye-catching, we want it to be educational. And there's a lot of other things that we can do as well. And so hopefully we'll see this in future sort of formats as we go forward. One of the things that we even thought of is in our campaign, we would like to sort of make a connection to this pelican. And so you may see on Facebook a post that says, can you help us decide on what name would be great for this pelican campaign? So hopefully you'll see that soon and we can get your input on what we might want to do. So this is sort of just gives you an idea of what they're working with, and any other ideas that you may wish would be fantastic for us to do. Again, doing some of the things that we can do electronically has a very low price tag. It's all digital. When it comes down to printing these pamphlets, if it's a physical thing, then that's where we will need to research that as well. Hopefully everybody has noticed we published our February list of AT opportunities on our website. I do want to share that there's only 8 hours that are required for us to recertify, besides the 40 hours of volunteer time. And already between January and February, I did a quick check and we have about 40 hours worth of AT opportunity posted. Now, one of the reasons we want to continue to do this, yes, we only need 8 hours, but heck, there's so much that we can learn. There's so much more that we can do in the field that we're sort of focusing on, that we want to create a diverse list of opportunities. Whether you like birding, you like plants, you like anything along those lines, we'll find something that hopefully that will attract your attention. And again, you only need 8 hours, but boy, there's a lot of stuff that we can learn and to be better stewards of our area. There's 2 that I wanted to highlight. This NOAA book club meeting, and they have a book published called Plastic Free, and they'll have the authors for this discussion. And I think it's a really interesting concept, this idea of what will it take to just get rid of the plastic in your life. We can be talking about NURDLEs, we can talk about recycling. We know that 1 out of 10 bottles is actually recycled into something else. So even though we're thinking of, well, what can we do to replace the NURDLE, the problem is still going to be there. Plastic is a sort of a commodity that's going to be hard to break away from. And so they have an interesting book where they first tried this, and this is a global movement. There's people from all over the country that for the month of July, they decide to go plastic free. And now plastic free means I will not use a single-use piece of plastic. And so when you start to think about everything that you do every day, how much is a single-use plastic? So again, this is a book review. I think it's something that we should consider if we are really concerned about the use of plastic. Monday, February 15th at 8 o'clock. So take a look at that. There's another AT opportunity out there for the Texas Water Specialist Program. A lot of their training now is virtual, so you can obtain this certification now. We've already had 1 or 2 sessions presented, but one of the things that they said is if you miss one of their presentations, and if your organization has sort of a gathering where we can view the video that they recorded, and discuss it, they'll give us credit for it. So we don't have to attend every session. And if a group of us want to do this and we miss one or two of the recordings or some of the presentations, we can go back and sort of review it together and still get credit for this Texas Water Specialist opportunity. We did have a volunteer project. We had a group of people go out to help the SBI Birding Center. What you see on the screen is basically a lot of muck and mud that Javi out there asked for help to sort of create a new channel for the animals out there. For those of us that went out there, we called it really, it was more like Javi's chain gang. You can see Javi standing out there in the back, hardly doing any work. No, I'm just kidding. He did a lot of it was really an interesting experience to walk in this mud and this muck and try to shovel it out. I mean, it's always great to go out there and actually have some of this physical work and try to do some of this activity. And then Javi sent us a picture afterwards. So this is the finished result. And to see nature actually move in to what we created. I think it's going to be something that we can do. There's other things that he would like us to do out at the Birding Center. And I think it's great for us to be able to do that. And this was an interesting activity. Some of the new trainees that went out there had a fun experience actually trying to make their way through the muck. Some of us decided to take a bath in it, but that's another story. We did have another Boca Chica event. We went out there and we were able to collect at least 1 truckload of trash from one of the birding nesting areas. We would like to do that again. As I mentioned, with the new COVID regulations, we have to sort of take those guidelines into consideration before we can plan the next one. There's plenty of plastic out there, and it's kind of depressing when you pick up a plastic bottle and it just crumbles into your hand into tiny little plastic things that you think an animal is going to eat. But we do what we can, and so we'll continue to do that. And it just takes. We have a couple of extra steps that we need to do the next Boca Chica cleanup, but we'll work on that. We do have some new opportunities that we're working on that we wanted to go ahead and share with you. This weekend, you've seen it posted out on our Facebook. ACUS has been advertising this as well as the Great Backyard Bird Count. There was a Cornell presentation on how to participate with the Backyard Bird Count today. There's a lot of presentations, a lot of recordings that you can look at. This is a great opportunity to help this effort. Take a look at some of these opportunities. And again, that's this weekend, Friday to Monday. There is a program by Journey North, and what they're trying to do is monitor the migration of the monarchs. This started back in December, runs through March. And so even though we're a little bit behind, we can go ahead and begin participating with this. They're interested in basically going out there and for 15 minutes, you can count the number of adult monarchs that you see. I'm not very good at identifying their eggs yet, but they want to know if you find the presence of eggs. You don't necessarily have to count them. They just want to know that they're reproducing or that you see the caterpillars. They have a website. You register at journeynorth.org/reg, and on that same website, you do your reports. They have a couple of videos that walk you through that. They want you to do it once a week from the same location. And again, we're going to, if you wish, go ahead and register. Do this from starting this week all the way to March. Why March? March is when they expect the full migration to take place. And they do go through some instructions on how they want us to report the sightings. And if you could take a photograph, they appreciate the photographs as well. The City Nature Challenge, you've seen some posts already about this challenge. It takes place April 30th through May 9th. The first period is to find and identify the wildlife. It can be birds, it can be reptiles, it can be plants, it can be whatever it is. They want us to be able to capture the wildlife that we have. The following week is basically, once those are uploaded, identifying so that we know exactly what it is that we saw. A lot of it depends on being able to really capture some very good photos of what it is that we saw. How we can help is we can adopt a park. We add our identifications during these dates, and we can also share it with our friends, family, churches, garden clubs, everybody. We want to be able to represent the species that we can find in our region. That is what we wish to do. Find the wildlife, take photos, join, upload them into iNaturalist so that we can have them shared. Anything that you capture during this time frame, the April 30th through May 3rd, will be consolidated. You can be involved in another project, another iNaturalist project for another group, but they will capture the timestamp on all these observations to be able to include it to the City Nature Challenge. We'll share with you the link to the leaderboard where they're basically tracking how many of these are being reported by who and so forth. One of the things that we're trying to do is we're working with our sister chapter to be able to say, okay, the Upper Valley, you guys are going to focus on the parks and the regions that are up there. We'll take the Cameron County coastal area. And so to do this, we're trying to come up with a list of parks and sites. We'll share this with you, or you can share with us one of your popular places to go look at nature. And we can create a list of members that are sort of taking care of that region, that coverage area, so that we can try to take a snapshot of as much of the valley as we can. To Tony Heenahan, one of the things he pointed out is, this can be things, let's say you go to Ramsey and you're taking an observation of some of the gardens that they have there. You do need to flag them as cultivated. We planted those plants. But for Tony Heenahan and some of the scientists, they really want to be able to capture the wildlife. So go to your state parks, capture what is out there, just to be able to get a good snapshot of everything that they see. So take a look at that. We'll be posting more information about the City Nature Challenge coming up.
Robert, can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
I know you just said you're going to be posting more about it soon, but would there be a way for us to organize small groups to go, to go together, just for the leadership to sort of share that information if we're not, I'm not really connected with many people in the membership or in our class, right? Just yet. So if you guys could share sort of little groups that are forming or something.
So our idea was to sort of create this list of sites, of parks, of places where you guys go birding, you guys go look for plants, you guys go look for, whatever it is that you wish to focus, these different areas. And to be able to create a list of these sites, and then folks that are willing to say, hey, I go to that park, I jog there, I ride my bike there. I'm willing to sort of help with the group that is looking at Ramsey Park, or that is looking at Palo Alto Battlefield, or any of those locations. Now, at the same time, though, we need to abide by our COVID guidelines. So it's not like we can get a pile of a bunch of different people into a van and go to a park. You still need to abide. If you reside in the same household, you can travel together. You can go make your observations together. You can certainly meet other people the day that they're going. And we just simply ask that you follow the guidelines with masks, with social distancing and so forth, so we can still do it together, but just don't forget the safety that we want to make sure we ensure. So we can create the list, and hopefully folks will say, hey, I'd like those sites, I go to them, I'll take this, and then other folks can sort of see that and say, hey, that's great. Maybe there's a specific day during this time frame that people want to go and sort of look at Ramsey or want to visit SPI and so on. So that kind of coordination might take place afterwards, but we'll definitely help as much as we can to sort of get you connected.
Thanks.
We do have another project that's coming up that is the it's tied to Texas Park and Wildlife's Great Texas Wildlife Trails. And you may have heard of us talking about this Adopt a Loop. Essentially, there is, as you can see, the map of Texas has been broken up into different regions. And there are certain trails for folks to go out and see nature, to view nature. And so we're joining this project for the lower Texas coast to try to look at these sites and help Texas Parks and Wildlife look for things such as, hey, your sign is missing. The directions that you created for this site are wrong. Oh, by the way, this place, I'd hate to park my car there because it's too dangerous. Little things like that, they want our help. And so this is one of the things that we're going to do. We'll, again, have more details and more information. We have started some of the work for here. For the lower Texas coast, we're talking about 16 loops. Again, we're working with the South Texas Border Chapter. They will take the upper half of the valley. We'll take the lower coastal region. That leaves us with 9 loops that we're targeting. Of those loops, these are the names that have been created by Texas Parks and Wildlife for them. They stretch all the way to Port Mansfield down to Brownsville. Ramsey is listed on here. SPI is listed on here. All these different loops are within our scope. It'd be great if we could say, well, wait a minute. I mean, can we tie this perhaps with the City Nature Challenge? The answer is absolutely yes. I mean, we can go out there, because I'll share with you what we're trying to do is a little bit more of the specifics of what is it that we're trying to do with this Adopt a Loop. And this gives you an idea. Within these loops that we're taking on, there's 44 sites, 44 physical locations that they're saying are part of each of these loops. So you'll notice that the Gladys Porter Zoo is here. Hugh Ramsey Park is up at the Los Loros Loop. Somehow they've tagged the entire city of Rio Hondo as part of their loop. And so some of these things we're asking Parks and Wildlife, well, what did you mean by Rio Hondo? If I go to the location that you have instructions on, it puts me right into this part of the city. Can we move the location to this GPS location? Because it's actually that you can see there's a park there. There's something that you can see. And so working with them to sort of identify all these sites, and there's been a group of us that have been visiting these specific locations to do that initial assessment. But there's a role that everybody can play once we get to that next stage. So this first part, yes.
I have a question on that. On those, some of those sites, I asked specifically, like, for example, Las Palomas and Ebony Unit. Because like the Ebony Unit, there's a little gazebo that's broken up, and I talked to Tony about fixing it up and cleaning the trash and doing all kinds of stuff there, and he said absolutely not. We're not even allowed to do that kind of stuff. So will they allow us to come to these places for the iNaturalist?
And so that's a great question. And so one of the things that we're doing, sort of that first step, is we're verifying the information that Parks and Wildlife has for these sites, the Nature Tourism Department. Where is it located? And we're making contact with folks, let's say like Tony Hinahan, to get more details. If it's a wildlife management area, can we really expect the public to go to it? Cactus Creek Ranch is on this list. We need to work with them to sort of see, well, how can you as a site on the loop work if the public is being told, hey, this is a great site to see this wildlife. So some of those details of can we go to these places, we need to sort of research them. And that's one of the things that we've been doing for about a month, I think now. We've been trying to go to these sites and sort of do that initial assessment. If you go to some of these sites, if these are some of the sites that you'd like to go birding to or go to look at nature there, that is something that you can help us too. There's roughly about 4, maybe 5 of us that if you trip to some of these places, go to some of these places, you can help us sort of fill in some of these details. I think somebody just posted the inn at Chachalaca Bend, correct. It's listed on the loop, but then I forward that information back to the Parks and Wildlife to say, this place is up for sale. And one of the things that we're trying to do is say, but hey, there's this location, maybe it's not very well publicized, but it's a great place that we can see. It's another Resaca, for example, that has great viewing opportunities for wildlife. And so that's part of that first step is, are these sites still sites that are accessible, that the owners actually want us to be there, that they say, hey, we'll work out some way that we can allow the public in. Some places like at Camp Rio, for example, they might set the terms to say, hey, we're willing to do something on a specific day once a month or anything like that. Anything will help. Also, it might hopefully for some of these locations give them some recognition that they might want on this nature tourism realm. So Alicia, I'm not sure if it answered your question, but some of these places we need to sort of figure out and work and figure out, can this actually work? Some of the wildlife management areas, those may not be as accessible to.
Well, I have access. I have access, like, for example, at Las Palomas, because I go banding there with Mark, and I could probably do a little bit in my breaks and or as I'm walking, you know, take a few pictures here and there, but not as a regular. It just can't be done unless they give us a special permission. Now, I talked about it because, like, right now, hunters, they don't allow anybody there because hunters have access to them. And I said, well, what if I was to get like a hunting license, not hunt, but just go out there so that I can have permission to be there. So I was going to look into that from Parks and Wildlife and see possibly I could get in that way with a hunter's license.
And now part of the question though is if this is being advertised to the general public and they cannot go in there unless they jump through some of these hurdles, then we may go back to Parks and Wildlife to say, you know what, this is going to be challenging for us to share this with the public as a nature tourism spot if they can't go there easily.
Right. But their whole idea is to like inventory the plants and the wildlife that's there. But it could be like in a restrictive form. Like when we do iBird lists, some places you have to show it as restricted, which that's one of them that I show as a private restricted place, so that no other birder can go in there unless you know, they're with a group of banders or whoever, or TPWD or somebody.
And so some of those details are the things that we would share back with Parks and Wildlife, the nature tourism, that if they want to keep this as a spot on this loop, they need to realize that these are the restrictions.
Yeah.
This should be something that on that map that they published that the public could go to relatively easily. It shouldn't be something that they have to get a special permit to or anything like that. So that can be a challenge. And so sitting in Austin somewhere, it's hard for them to know all of that. So that initial assessment that we're doing is to send them back this information to say, how, you know, is this okay? Now, on the other hand, we can talk to wildlife management and say, hey, is there a way that the public could actually access some of these locations? Is there a way to sort of open up to the public, even if it's one weekend out of the month or something like that, something to make it work, because it is such a unique place. And so when I look, or when I show this initial assessment, that's the kind of information they want from us. You know, some of these sites is it public accessible? Are there any dangers? Is the site even there anymore? This is that first step that we're doing. And some of that we can just call them up, identify them on the map, and see that their instructions are correct. So some of those things we can do from home. By the way, before I continue, it is 8:30. The meeting is scheduled to end at 8:30. If anybody needs to leave, please feel free to do so. I will continue, and the full recording I'll publish later this week for everybody to sort of see what they missed after 8:30. So I will continue. The second step of the Adopt a Loop are the site visits. And again, we've been doing that already on an ongoing basis to actually physically see the place and sort of document some of those restrictions. You know, if I go to a wildlife management area, I see some of their signs posted, I take a picture so that I can send it back and say, hey, just to make sure that you know, this site may not readily be available for just everybody. And now I touched on the citizen science part. This is when, as part of their Adopt a Loop project, we want to document the flora and fauna that exists there. So that if you are a tourist that wants to go to Palo Alto Battlefield, we want them to be able to know, well, what will I see while I'm there? What plants would I see? What birds would I see? What other kinds of wildlife will I see? And that is where we sort of see our chapter as a whole can really play a role with that. And we want to do that seasonally. Let's say the perfect time might be March, April, May, when the migration's taking place, or before summer hits and a lot of the plants that are blooming, die off. So we're working on an idea of when would that kind of seasonal 4 times a year visit would make sense. But there's nothing to stop us from documenting. You go out birding this weekend and you can document and attach to the Adopt a Loop project the birds that you see, the plants that you saw, and so forth. I think the seasonal idea is good, but hey, when it rains, go out there a week later, and that's when the plants are taking advantage of the rain by blooming and so on. So again, the scheduling is something that we're trying to work on to sort of get your help to be able to document through iNaturalist and eBird some of this. If you're on eBird, I'm sorry.
Robert, this is Emma. You had asked me if I was interested, and I told you yes. Will you be contacting me when I'm to go out to these sites that I told you I could help you with?
Absolutely. So if anybody is interested in helping and participating, again, we'll share this video. You can stop it at the maps. You can go to the Greater Wildlife Trails and sort of see which loops are near you, which sites you might already go to anyway. And so we definitely do need your help. I've started a list of people that have at least contacted me. Maria is also helping me with this. And so we can sort of, yes,
Robert,
go ahead.
It's Maria. Yes, I was trying to answer Alicia's question on those wall management areas. The maps and on the sites themselves, on the website, it'll tell the public, contact these numbers, and that's part of our job is to make sure that those numbers are working numbers. If they're able, because of the hunting or whatever other restrictions there might be in these areas, the public can, since they're made, the loops are made for touring, for citizens, normal citizens to just go and tour and bird watch and so forth. But they have numbers on where they can contact if there's restrictions. And that's what we need to update and let the state know that, certain sites have certain restrictions. And then I think, Alicia, you were asking about whether we could go out there and clean or was that the question that I understood?
For this particular one, yes. We saw, in fact, it was Susan and I, we saw just a lot because people do use it to go, and it's a small, little lake out there on South Rangerville Road. And we went and they tore up a little gazebo that TPWD had done, and we wanted to repair it. Just
exactly. Yeah, I think it's the same one I saw. Yeah, I went out there to do the initial survey, and it did. And yes, that's for us, for the Adopt a Loop. It would not be. That is not one of our functions, but maybe through TMN, if Tony or whoever is out there.
No, Tony talked to me.
Excuse me.
Tony said that he was gonna get somebody to go fix that that gazebo and clean it up
and things like that. And yes, and that's one of the things where for us it wouldn't be, for us meaning for the Adopt a Loop project, that is not one. We can just report, but not say we're gonna go, and have a day out there and clean up or anything like that. But if they want it for a tourist, then they have to do something, I guess within Texas Parks and Wildlife, talk to each other and say, hey, you're on the loop, we're promoting you. But that was the other. And then the other question too, I think that you had was as far as the privacy of what you noticed because you're in a wall management area or in the iNaturalist, for this or any other project, if you don't want the public to know where you're hosting or what the actual location is, but only the managers of that project then you can restrict it when you do, when you upload it, that only they get to see it. Only Texas Parks and Wildlife, the managers for the Adopt a Loop project, get to see it, or any other, iNaturalist, wherever you wanted to post it, if you wanted to join that project. It's like same thing with eBird. You don't post it, like you said, you post a private area. And in the iNaturalist, it's not visible to anybody, only them. So that's
Right,
why
I do an eBird report every Sunday that I go band at Las Palomas, and
Yes.
it does say restricted access
Exactly.
on it. So
Same thing with iNaturalist. Yeah, if you're in that restricted area, you see something that's they really would like to know as biologists, because that's what they want to do. They wanted us to start documenting what we see
Right.
out there, to start their history of, animals, insects, anything that's out there.
Mhm.
But you don't want that area to say, hey, this is open to the public. In iNaturalist, it's the same way. You restrict it, and only they can see it. You and they can
Right.
see it. So that
Alicia.
stops it from going out
Yes.
to the public.
Alicia, this is Tony.
Yes.
You had asked if you can go out there during hunting season. You do not want to do that because you can get shot.
No.
if you're moving around.
No, I know that, Tony. And I was specifically asking, when are the dates, or after hunting season, is there a date that we can go? For example, hunting season's over, but right now
Yes.
I think it's quail and chachalaca hunting. And I don't know when that's over and done with, but they were talking about getting a license. And so once you get the license, then all these dates, because you have the booklet and everything. And then but I was just gonna check into that to get my feet into place, because you have no access to it anyway.
The seasons are posted online with
Mhm.
Texas Parks and Wildlife, so you can do that
Yeah,
and check it out.
right. But that somebody told me that it was just a $12 license tag or something that was needed for that.
Yes.
Alicia,
Let me tell you, I have I get that license every year too, but it's for public, what is it called? Public places or something. It's separate from your hunting license, that you can have access to those areas, not
Right.
behind the gate.
Okay, guys, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and table this topic. And let me plan on having another meeting later on that we can perhaps collect some of you that are willing to sort of help us go through this, some of this information on some of these sites that you guys are really familiar with. I think that would help
Right.
us a lot. But let's continue, and we'll schedule that for a later date.
Okay, I'll help.
We do have an opportunity that we are reviewing. I shared this on our Facebook page. There is a law that basically says no one can do any crabbing during the week of February 19th through the 28th. And basically any crab trap left in the waters is basically considered litter. And so during this time frame, Parks and Wildlife is asking if we can help collect some of these abandoned traps. And so during this time frame, we've contacted, our point of contact is somebody from the fisheries station. And so we will coordinate with him. What he's asking us is, if we do this, if you do collect traps, to let him know how many and approximately where it was collected. Again, we're reviewing this, and so we'll share this with everybody if this is something that some of you are capable of helping with. There is another project that we're looking into. You may have noticed this plant that I have shared in different pictures. This is a Manfreda, and what this conservation project is asking us, and it's coordinated by the National Butterfly Center, is they're looking for volunteers that might go out to wildlife areas who know landowners who are willing to sort of give us permission to take a look and look for this plant. One of the things that they're trying to do is save the Manfreda giant skipper. This is its host plant. And these pictures are from along the Arroyo Colorado near Rio Hondo. So we know the plant is out there. We've seen it a couple of years ago. And so this project is getting kicked off. We're reviewing it. And hopefully this is something that we can help with too. If you guys are out birding, look out for this plant. There's specific training that they're going to offer to be able to identify it. There's a specific time in the year that they want us to go look, because this is what you'll see. You should be able to see the plant, and when it's blooming, it really stands out. And so again, we're reviewing this, and if it gets approved, we'll let everybody know how to register for the training, and what it is that we want us to do. This is grant funded, which is great. They're really trying to help us preserve this butterfly and the plant as well. Part of the project is not only to go out there and find where is this plant, verify that it's blooming, and they want us to be able to go back and collect seeds as well. So this is sort of a couple of months where we're going out to identify the plant and then return to monitor where the plant is, collect the seeds so that they can hopefully propagate the plant. Let's see, so there is another project with a fishery station in conversations with I'm drawing a blank on his name, Joshua, I think. Yeah. He's the station manager out there at the fishery stations, and one of the things he shared with me is the series of ponds that they have there, and the fact that when you're on that road, you can only see maybe 1, 2, maybe 3. And we played around with the idea that wouldn't it be great to be able to create trails through these ponds for us to be able to go out there and see the wildlife. Because he shared the fact that there is plenty out to see, we just can't get to it. So this is something that's very much in the sort of drawing planning stage to see if this is something that we can do, and we need to plan accordingly. But this is something that we're looking at, and hopefully we'll be able to do that and put it out there as an opportunity for us. I think it's a unique opportunity. We often don't get a chance to create new trails, and I think this will be great for us to be able to try to take on. And there's 3 opportunities. If you attended the virtual volunteer fair, you saw the Adopt a Loop, you saw the City Nature Challenge, and there were 3 others that we saw that we thought would be interesting for us to look at. One is the Butterfly Monitoring Project, the Adopt a Paddling Trail, and the Invasive Species Surveys and Verification. So these are 3 that we're going to go back and review the presentations, and sort of I at least signed up for them to try to get more details, and maybe this might be some other opportunities for us to be able to take a look at and say, hey, we can do those. And so hopefully we'll have more information for everyone soon on these. So again, if you're interested in anything that we've covered, I post an email up there, Rio Grande Valley Chapter @gmail.com. Actually, I made a mistake. It's Rio Grande Valley Chapter.tmn @gmail.com. If you saw anything that was interesting, and even if it's the Adopt a Loop, if you want to have a park for us to visit or make sure that we have on our radar for the City Nature Challenge, or there's a park that you wish to own, and by own I mean it's a park that you go to that you'd like to be sort of go out there and help us with. You want to help us visit some of these sites. For example, Alicia mentioned that there's some sites that she and Susan visit as part of birding. Maybe she can help us out with some of those things. If you're good identifying birds, plants, butterflies, and so forth, the City Nature Challenge, that second week is to help us identify the pictures that our members are uploading. And if any of these neat projects that we have going, if you would like to be the champion for them, we could definitely use the help. We can only do so much. One of us can only do so much. So we definitely need the help. And again, you can shoot me an email at riograndevalleychapter.tmn @gmail.com. I saw quite a few comments about being able to, thinking that we should be partners with the NURDLE Patrol, and I'm definitely going to follow up on that as well.
Robert.
Are there any other questions? We've gone over
Yes,
our
Robert.
scheduled time limit, but
This is
yes,
Emma.
go ahead. Yes.
I attended that volunteer fair, and I was going to sign up for the Adopt a Loop, but I don't have to since you've already done it, right? And I was
Correct.
also going to sign up for those other ones that you just posted. Do we sign up anyway if you've done it?
For some of the projects, like the City Nature Challenge, like the Adopt a Loop, I mean, it's good for folks like Tony Hinahan, for Jason or Joshua with Texas Parks and Wildlife to know that you're interested. Chances are he will probably pass that information back to us, especially because they know that both the South Texas Border Chapter and our chapter are sort of have already kind of volunteered for those projects. So if you wish to do that, you certainly can, but letting me know is definitely, I mean, it'll get you involved into the project. This butterfly monitoring, the Adopt a Paddling Trail, invasive species, again, we're trying to find more information so that we can share with you. So if you want to, great. If not, like I said, I've signed up for them to try to get more information as well. Oh, by the way, I didn't put this out there. There is one group, the Native Plant Society of Texas, that had a project of creating the bingo cards for nature related. And so they're looking at being able to, yeah, I like that one too. I signed up for that one to get more information. What is it that we can do? But they're basically creating the bingo out of native plants and so forth. And I talked to the coordinator, and we thought of being able to create little information cards, maybe even with a barcode that if they scan it, it takes them to iNaturalist where they can find out more information about the plant. To myself, I thought, well, heck, can't we do that with birds, with animals, things that we see in the RGV, and then be able to disseminate and share that. So I thought that might be something that we can look forward to.
Robert,
Sure.
I have several manfredas growing in my yard, and I don't know which variety they are. I'm sure the blooms all look similar, but the ones that I have, the blooms look like the one pictured. And if anybody wants to, come over and identify them, I'd be more than happy to save the seeds because they bloom every year. The only problem is the bloom spikes get 6 or 7 feet tall and they usually fall over. And I usually just cut the blooms off because, they fall over into the yard and I can't mow.
And this may be a project you can help with right from home, since the plants are in your backyard. Their training to be able to identify these two species will be virtual. And then,
well, I could probably look them up in Ken King's book.
yes.
I've got his book. I just never have taken the time to do it. But I think I've got 4 or 5 plants. Of course, they make babies. They're,
And what would be great is if you could also keep an eye out for this butterfly. They want us to be able to sort of document and capture and through observations through iNaturalist if we see this butterfly. And that'd be great for us to be able to say, hey, it's in Linda's backyard. Everybody go look at Linda's backyard because she's got it.
Unfortunately, I've never seen that butterfly, but...
and unfortunately, that's what they're reporting, is that this Manfreda giant skipper, they see so few, and they want to be able to correct that. And so we can help out. And again, if it's in your backyard, you're a landowner, you're already volunteering to sort of help with this project, and I think that's great. Again, when you see this plant in bloom with this 6-foot stalk, it is amazing. It is really, really an amazing plant. But this will be a great project for us.
There used to be quite a few not quite a few, but there used to be a few over at Ramsey, and the javelinas ate them.
Yes, that's the other problem that they're finding is if they're out in the wild and javelinas are out there, they love to eat this. And that's a shame.
I've taken several plants over there, and they lasted 2 or 3 days, and they were gone. The javelinas will find them if you plant them.
Yeah, Christine has taken them several times. They're eating them immediately.
Yeah.
So that's definitely part of the challenge, is trying to be able to preserve this plant for the butterfly, and somehow keep them protected. The one place that we took all these pictures was private property, fenced, and I think thankfully that was why the javelinas or any other critter hadn't found them yet. But we went there at the right time and they were blooming left and right. And that's the kind of thing that they want us to be able to sort of document for them.
Maybe we could do something at Ramsey, fence around one with a more than just a little plastic fence, like we did the water lilies. We've got fences around, made water lily cages so the turtles wouldn't eat the water lilies. And we've had limited success. We've got one cage that's just full, but the other two cages, the water lilies didn't make it. So this spring we're going to take some more water lilies, but maybe we could try planting one plant and put up a substantial little fence around it. Of course, then somebody would probably think, oh, this is rare, I'll steal it.
Well, we can try.
It's worth a try, especially if we know we can get seeds. If we can, like you said, they make little babies, so we can separate. We have one in a pot that we need to separate, and it's worth a try. It's definitely worth a try. All right. Does anybody have any other questions or comments or thoughts before we?
Unrelated. Yeah, unrelated to this. I was just wondering about the pins from last year. Nothing's happened yet, or did I miss it, or?
Well, is Joni still on?
I'm here. We have received the recertification pins, but now I'm waiting on the 2020 Against All Odds pin that was promised at the annual meeting in October. Those aren't going to be sent out until the middle of this month. So I'm waiting for those pins to arrive so that I can distribute both pins.
And then at that point, whenever we plan something, we'll have to get that permission through AgriLife that has to be gotten at least 2 weeks in advance of anything.
Exactly.
So we may be able, well, I know that they promised it mid-February, but it's going to be mailed. It's going to be mailed, snail mail, so we'll see how and when they show up.
So you haven't missed anything.
Any other questions, anyone? Don't forget, newsletter articles due by February 16th. You can email that to the chachalaca at RGVCTMN.org. Did you post the other email?
I did.
And Barbara did post the
RGVCTMN, the longest email address in the world.
Oh, it's not initial. It's Rio Grande Valley Chapter.
Yeah.
TMN@gmail.com.
Right.
Again, thank you guys. Thank you for holding out. We're almost at 9 o'clock. Sorry for running long. We did have a lot of information to share, and there's still so much more, but we'll save it for a later date or Facebook or our YouTube channel and whatnot. Again, I'll capture this recording, post it on our YouTube channel later on this week for everybody to have. You guys again, and have a good night. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.